अब सुन्ने छ?
सुनिरहेछ।
माइक अफ गरेर थिएँ। So good morning everyone.
Good morning, ma'am.
I'm going to be talking about anatomy of the female genital tract. Okay, so I'm Dr. Anshu. You won't be able to see me for a few days, I guess. After it opens, we'll get to know each other, okay, personally. So this is anatomy. You've already talked about, you've read about anatomy in your basic sciences already, right? So I'll be talking about anatomy of the female genital tract. So you have to know about the anatomy to get to know obstetrics and gynecology well, okay? So I'm going to start with the uterus, all right? So am I audible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we start with the uterus first. So I have two classes of anatomy, and then there is another class for perineum and ligaments. Okay, so the perineum there are total three classes of anatomy. So today I'll be talking about uterus, tubes, and ovaries. The rest I'll talk about in the other class. So here I start with the uterus. So all of us know what the uterus is. It is a hollow piriform muscular organ which is in between the bladder and the rectum. Okay, so the bladder is in front and the rectum is behind the uterus. Okay, so there is something known as anteversion and anteflexion. So anteversion, all of us know this, I think. Okay, so anteversion is what? It is the angle made by the uterus with the anybody?
Vagina.
Vagina. Okay, so it is the uterus with the vagina. So that is anteversion. Anteflexion is the angle made by the body of the uterus with the cervix. Okay, so anteflexed. So uterus is always anteverted and anteflexed. All right. So anteflexion is 120 degrees, whereas anteversion is 90 degrees. So it inclines to the right, so that if the uterus is a little dextro-rotated, okay, so cervix is directed towards the left side. The size of the uterus also you should know, because you should know when the uterus is abnormally enlarged, okay. So the size of the uterus is 8 into 5 into 1.25 centimeters. So it is 8 centimeters long, 5 centimeters wide, and 1.25 centimeters thick, okay. And it weighs 50 to 80 grams, a non-pregnant uterus, okay. So it weighs 50 to 80 grams, okay. So that's the weight of the uterus, okay. So the dimensions 8 into 5 into 1.25 centimeters, and it weighs nearly 50 to 80 grams in a non-pregnant uterus, okay. So now in pregnancy, this 8 centimeters becomes as big as 25-30 centimeters, okay, and the weight becomes as big as 1 kgs. All right, so that's the weight of the uterus when it becomes pregnant, the at term pregnancy. So what are the parts of the uterus? Here we can see the uterus has a body, okay, and the cervix. Okay, so can you see my cursor, all of you? Can you see
Yes,
the
ma'am.
cursor? Okay,
Yes,
so this
ma'am.
is the body of the uterus. It is up till here, and then from here starts the cervix. Okay, so the body and the cervix. And now even in the body, it is divided into body proper and the fundus. Okay, so body is, the body has the fundus and the body proper. So the fundus is this dome thing, okay, so dome shaped part, so it lies above the openings of the uterine tube. So these are the tubes, the fallopian tubes, okay, so it lies above the opening of the fallopian tubes, that dome shaped thing, that is the fundus. The body proper is between the two tubal openings and up till the isthmus. Now what is the isthmus? It is the narrowest part, so this is the isthmus, okay, so that is the narrowest part of the body. So it goes up till the isthmus of the uterus. So that is the isthmus. Now, what is cornua? Cornua of the uterus is at the junction of the body and the fundus. Okay, so this part is the cornua of the uterus. Okay, so the cornua is where you have the attachment of the fallopian tube and the ovarian ligament. Okay, so the ovary is also over here. So this is the cornua of the uterus. This is the the fundus of the uterus, and this is the body proper. Okay, so this is the body proper. Here you can see the isthmus. This is a narrow, this is narrow over here, right? So this part is narrow, that is the isthmus, and this is the cervix. Okay, so isthmus is 0.5 centimeters. It is between the body and the cervix. Now there's something known as anatomical and histological internal os. So above is the anatomical internal os and below is the histological internal os, and that's how the isthmus forms. So this is the, you can see a little constriction over here, right? This part. Is it clear, all of you, on your screen? Can you appreciate?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
This is the anatomical os. This is the histological os. So this much is the isthmus. It is this small. Now what is the importance of the isthmus is, this isthmus, which is just 0.5 centimeters, right, in the non-pregnant uterus, this forms the lower uterine segment. Okay, so lower uterine segment is what? That is the lower part of the uterine segment in pregnancy. So this will become as big as 5 to 7 centimeters in pregnancy. Okay, this is only 0.5 centimeters. This forms the lower uterine segment, and this is where we give the incision of cesarean section. Okay, so that is isthmus, the importance of the isthmus. All right, so it forms a lower uterine segment, and the cervix is 2.5 centimeters. You have a supravaginal and a vaginal portion. Okay, so supravaginal is above the vagina, vaginal is inside the vagina. So you have the external, yeah, I'll show you. So this is the cervix, this whole thing. Now see, this is the vagina from here. So this much of the cervix is supravaginal. This is vaginal. The part which protrudes into the vagina is the vaginal portion of the cervix. Okay, so you can see this is supravaginal cervix, this is vaginal cervix. Okay, so this is the cervical canal. Okay, this is the cervical canal. Now what are the relations of the uterus? Okay, so anteriorly, can you appreciate the picture, all of you? So anteriorly you have, this is the uterus. That is the uterus. So here you can see it is, this is the, what is this? This is the bladder. Okay, so anteriorly you have the bladder. Posteriorly you have the rectum. So anteriorly above the internal os. So internal os, the cervix has an internal os and an external os. So this is internal os, this is external os. So above the internal os, you have, it forms the posterior wall of the uterovesical pouch. So this is uterovesical, between the uterus and the bladder. So uterovesical pouch, and below the internal os, it is separated from the bladder by loose areolar tissue. So this is the loose areolar tissue. It is separated from the base. This is the bladder base. Okay, so this is the base of the bladder. It is separated by loose areolar tissue. Okay. The same thing here, you can see this is the uterus. Okay, this is the uterovesical pouch, and this is the bladder base. Okay, so it is separated by the loose areolar tissue. Now posteriorly it is separated from the rectum by the pouch of Douglas. So this is pouch of Douglas, and here what happens, the intestine, coils of intestine might lie in this pouch of Douglas. So this is pouch of Douglas, the uterorectal pouch. Okay, so posteriorly. So posterior, it is covered with the peritoneum and it forms the anterior wall of the pouch of Douglas. Okay, so now what are the relations laterally? So that is the uterus again, laterally. So laterally you have broad ligament. So broad ligament is a double fold of peritoneum. Okay, and then you have the McInrod's ligament. So broad ligament is from here up till the nearly the internal os. Now from there it starts, the McInrod's ligament starts. Okay, it starts from internal os to the supravaginal cervix. Okay, so you have to visualize this a little. It is on lateral either sides of the uterus laterally. You have the broad ligament, which is the double fold of peritoneum. It goes up till the internal os. So all of you know what the internal os is. Yeah, in this picture I'll show you. This was what? What was this? What was this? Anybody? Are you listening, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
what is this?
Isthmus.
Isthmus. Okay, and
Isthmus.
this is what is this?
cervical
What part
canal.
is this? This is the cervical canal. So you have an internal os over here, and this is the external os. Okay, so this is the internal os, this is the external os. So the broad ligament extends up till the internal os, up till here, and then from here, from the internal os, laterally you have the McInrod's ligament. So from here, the McInrod's ligament will go laterally like that. So that is one very important support of the uterus. Okay. So laterally you have the McInrod's ligament, which starts from the internal os to the supravaginal cervix. Okay, from there, from here till the supravaginal cervix, and then it goes laterally. Okay, and then what is the importance of this? There's an important lateral landmark, that is crossing of the uterine artery and ureter. So the uterine artery is related to the ureter 1.5 centimeters lateral at the level of the internal os. So at the level of the internal os, somewhere here, the uterine artery and ureter cross each other. So this is also important because when we are doing a hysterectomy, then 1.5 centimeters lateral is very close. So you might injure the uterine artery or the ureter at this point. So when you are clamping for the uterine artery, when you have to apply clamps during hysterectomy, at that time we might injure the ureter, which is lying very close to the uterus, that is 1.5 centimeters lateral at the level of the internal os. Okay, so this relation is also known as water under the bridge. So water is the ureter. So the ureter goes below the uterine artery at this point. Okay, so bridge is the uterine artery and water is the ureter, which carries urine. So it is known as water. Okay, so water under the bridge at 1.5 centimeters lateral to the internal os. Okay. So what is there in the body and the cervix of the uterus? So the inner structure. Okay. So in the body you have a perimetrium, you have a myometrium, and you have an endometrium. So 3 layers. Okay. So perimetrium is what? It is the serous coat which is present all around, all over the uterus. Okay. So it's all over except at the lateral borders. Why? Because at the lateral borders you have what do you have at the lateral border? Anybody?
Broad
Anyone?
ligament. Broad ligament.
So laterally you have the broad ligament. So except at that point, everywhere else the uterus is covered by a serous coat, which is the perimetrium. Okay, that is a fold of that is a peritoneum itself. Okay, so covering the serous coat. Then you have the myometrium. Okay, so myometrium it has smooth muscle fibers. Okay, with connective tissues. Now myometrium has actually 3 layers. Okay, so 3 layers of muscles. Okay, see, outer is longitudinal. Now the 3 layers are very distinct only in pregnancy because that's when it gets hypertrophied. Okay, it becomes big also, and all the 3 muscle layers are distinctly visible. So on the outer muscle is the longitudinal. Okay, longitudinal fibers. Then you have the middle interlacing, and then inner fibers of the muscle are inner circular. Okay. Now there's an importance, okay, so there's a clinical importance of the way these fibers are arranged. The middle interlacing fibers are also known as the living ligature of the uterus. Now what happens is when the blood vessels they run in this layer, and when this layer contracts, it closes the mouth of the blood vessels because it is interlacing. So the mouth of the vessels will be totally closed. So crisscross kind, so interlacing, so it will close the blood vessels. So that way it prevents postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, so that is a living ligature. It acts as a ligature for the bleeding vessels after delivery. If at all there is bleeding, if the uterus contracts, then there will be no bleeding. So this is one, you'll understand this better when you have a class on PPH. Okay, so postpartum hemorrhage. Okay, so that's when if the uterine muscles contract, the vessels automatically stop bleeding. That is because of this middle interlacing fibers, okay, of the muscle. Then inner layer is the endometrium. Okay, so it is known as the endometrium, which is a mucous lining. It has a single layer of columnar epithelium. Okay, sorry, it is not ciliated. Okay, it is single layer of columnar epithelium. It also has lamina propria, and that this endometrium changes. Okay, so it changes according to the hormones in the body. So that happens during menstruation and in pregnancy. So this endometrium is shed in menstruation. Okay, so a part of the endometrium is shed and then again it regenerates. So it is the endometrium, that's why it is changing. Now in pregnancy, what happens to the endometrium? It forms the decidua. Decidua is like a thick blanket. It is preparing itself. It is the covering for the fetus. Okay, so decidua, it forms the decidua. It is a thick layer of a blanket which prior to implantation it forms the decidua so that it can take in the fetus, the embryo. Okay, so during pregnancy this endometrium is known as the decidua, and in menstruation this endometrium is shed, part of it is shed and then it regenerates again. Okay, so that's why there is bleeding and all right. So and then we talk about the cervix. So that is the cervix here. You can see the cervix. So that is the external os. Okay, that's how we see the cervix from down below. So if you all know, we do a per speculum examination. That is, we examine the ladies through the vagina. We see the cervix. So when we are seeing the patient in the OPD, this is how we see the cervix. That is how it looks. That's the only part of the cervix that is visible to the naked eye. Okay, from down below, from the vagina. So the cervix is mainly fibrous connective tissue, okay, and there is hardly any smooth muscles. It is only 10 to 15%, okay. So this is also important. Why? Because of this property, the cervix can dilate and deliver the baby. So the small little cervix becomes as big as 10 centimeters. It dilates to up to 10 centimeters, allowing the baby to pass through. If it had muscles, then it would not be able to dilate that way. Okay, so that is why the smooth muscle is very less. It is basically fibrous connective tissue, the cervix. So there is something known as arbor vitae uteri. Okay, so that is the median ridge on the anterior and posterior surface of the canal. Okay, from which transverse folds radiate. So that is one property in the cervical canal. Okay, the canal is lined by single layer of tall columnar epithelium. Okay, so it has columnar epithelium in the canal. Now out here, I'll talk to you about this transformation zone also. So out here the epithelium changes, but in the canal it is columnar epithelium. Patches of cubical basal reserve cells are present underneath. So there is regeneration of the tissue of the cells. So some of the cells obviously are shed. Okay, so there is regeneration from the basal reserve. The basal reserve are cubical cells. Now these cells undergo squamous metaplasia and replace the superficial cells. Okay, so that's how the superficial cells will be replaced. So this, because the cells of the cervix are shed, that is why something known as pap smear. So have you heard of the pap smear? That is a smear we take from the cervix to rule out cervical cancers. Okay, so that is, we study the cells that are shed from the cervix. Okay, so because the cells are shed from the cervix, that is why we're using the pap smear, that cells to study what kind of cells are there in the cervix to rule out malignancies. Okay, so that is to rule out a pre-malignant condition basically. Okay. So am I going very fast or is it okay?
It is okay, ma'am.
Okay, so you can see the cervix. something known as the transformation zone. Okay, the transformation zone is about 1 to 10 millimeters wide. Here you can see this is the transformation zone. So this around the external os. Okay, that is where transformation. Why? Because the columnar cells of the canal, cervical canal, will the cervical canal has columnar cells, and the external os has squamous cells. Okay, outside this part is the squamous cells. So these dots you can see, this white dots, the white dots, and this much is the transformation zone. So this is where the cells are transforming. Okay, because the canal is lined by columnar cells, and outside here it is squamous cells. So this much part, this part is the transformation zone. Okay, that is on the external os. Okay, so this is what we are seeing outside. So it consists of endocervical stroma and glands. It is covered by squamous epithelium. The zone is not static, so it changes with hormone levels of estrogen, and it is irritated by infection and trauma, and there are more chances of severe dysplasia, carcinoma in situ, and invasive cancers in this zone, because this is constantly changing. The cells are constantly changing. Now what happens, this transformation zone might be only 1 millimeter width, or it might become 10 millimeters. So it depends upon the hormone level. So this might go in, or it might come out, these dots. Okay, that means this zone. So it might increase or it might decrease. So this is the zone from where we take the importance of this zone is we taking the cells of this zone and studying it on the slide, that is known as a pap smear. So the cells from the transformation zone are taken up and studied. Okay, so it is nearly 1 to 10 millimeter width. It consists of the endocervical stroma and glands, which is covered by squamous epithelium. The zone is not static, it changes with the hormone levels of estrogen. It is irritated by infection and trauma, and there are more chances of severe dysplasia, carcinoma in situ, and invasive cancers arising from the transformation zone. Okay, that is why, because it is rapidly changing. Okay, that's why cells during the change they might become dysplastic cells also. The same thing here, you can see this part. Okay, so this part is the transformation zone. Is it clear now? Is it better? See, this is the cervical canal. Okay, so over here you have the columnar cells of the endocervix. Okay, from here you have the ectocervix, that is squamous cells over here. Okay, so this part here, and here, it is squamous cells, and this in between is the transformation zone. Okay. So what are the secretions? Okay, so what are the secretions from the uterus? So the endometrium does not secrete. Okay, endometrium does not have secretory glands that much. Okay, so the secretion is scanty, it is watery. Cervical secretion that matters. So the cervical secretion, the physical and chemical properties change with menstrual cycle and with pregnancy. Okay, so it has an alkaline mucus, that is 7.8, the pH. Okay, so the secretion of the cervix is alkaline. All right, and it is rich in fructose, glycoprotein, mucopolysaccharides, and sodium chloride. Estrogen causes the this thing to be parallel to each other. Okay, so the glycoproteins are, because of the effect of estrogen, the glycoproteins in the secretion are parallel to each other, so that will allow sperm ascent. Okay, so the first half of the menstrual cycle is the estrogenic phase. Okay, so first half, and then after ovulation you have progesterone being secreted. Okay, so the first 1 to 14 days you have estrogen. So under the influence of estrogen, the secretion, the cervical secretions have those glycoprotein chains going parallel to each other, so that allows sperms to go up to the go up for fertilization. Now, second half, it does not allow sperms to go up. So, ascent of sperm is inhibited under progesterone. So, progesterone causes the glycoproteins to become interlacing and it prevents sperm ascent. Okay. The cervical mucus forms mucus plug which closes the cervical canal and has bacteriolytic property. So basically it is the cervical secretions which matter. The cervical secretion is alkaline, it has a pH of 7.8. But the vagina is acidic, all of us know, right? So the vaginal pH is acidic. It is the cervical mucus which is only alkaline, 7.8 the pH is. Okay, now we coming to the blood supply. The blood supply of the uterus. You have it is by the uterine artery, the ovarian, and branches from the vaginal artery. Okay, so here you can see the ovarian artery is a direct branch from the what? Aorta. Okay, so it comes directly from the aorta. Okay, and then you have here you have the common iliac, then internal and external iliac. So the uterine artery is a branch of the internal iliac. Okay, here it is there. See, this is the uterine artery. So it is a branch from the internal iliac. Internal iliac gives the superior vesicle, the uterine, the middle rectal, the vaginal, and the inferior vesicle. These are branches of the internal iliac artery. The vaginal is also a branch from the internal iliac artery. The ovarian is a direct branch from the aorta. Okay. So uterine artery is a branch from the internal iliac. It runs downwards and forwards along the lateral pelvic wall. It reaches the base of the broad ligament, turns medially, crosses the ureter at the level of the internal os. Okay, so it comes up till the internal os. It enters the uterus from this point, crosses the ureter anteriorly at the level of the internal os, and then it enters into the uterus. Okay, so this is how. See here, that is the uterine artery. It goes upwards here, and then this is the level, okay, of the internal os. This is the level of the internal os. So it is entering the uterus from here. Okay, so that is the internal os. That is the uterus here. You can see. Now this thing is shown in a cut section. So when the uterine artery enters the uterus, this is the uterine artery. It is piercing the uterus. It is coming inside, and then this is the perimetrium. This is the myometrium, and this is the endometrium. Okay, so the uterine artery itself will give branches. Arcuate. So you have the arcuate branch, that is the first branch. So it is going like this. The arcuate branch is running like that, okay, like an arc. So it is running like that in the myometrium, and it supplies the arcuate branch, supplies the perimetrium and the mid up to the middle of the myometrium. So it is running in the myometrium like that. That is the arcuate branch. The arcuate again gives off the radial artery. So this is the radial artery it is giving off, and then comes the basal artery. Okay, and then last is the spiral artery. The spiral arteries are that part of the spiral arteries are shed during menstruation. So regeneration of the arteries starts from the basal arteries. So this is the basal. It is supplying lower 1/3 up till lower 1/3 of the endometrium. So this is the endometrium. So you can see the basal arteries up till here. See, these are basal arteries. Okay, it is up till here. From here is the spiral arteries. Is it visible properly, people? Can you understand?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So you can understand how the uterine artery is supplying the uterus?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so the uterus, this is the uterine artery. It is entering into it is piercing the uterus, giving off the arcuate. So it is like an arc. So arcuate artery then gives off the basal arteries which supplies up till lower one, the inner 1/3 of the myometrium of the endometrium, and then comes the spiral arteries, which is not shown in this picture. The spiral arteries are not there. So spiral arteries are the arteries which is shed off along with the part of the endometrium. The spiral arteries are also shed off, and regeneration in menstruation starts from the basal arteries. Okay, so basal arteries are intact. So the same thing here. So what are the branches of the uterine artery? It gives the ureteric branch, supplies a part of the ureter also, the descending cervical and segmental arcuate. So arcuate is which is entering into the uterus, and descending cervical. So it gives a branch to the cervix also. It is going down and supplying the cervix also. So this is even better visible about the arcuate, the radial, basal up till here, and then the spiral. So this is the spiral artery. Okay, it is going running in a spiral fashion. So the nerve supply, you have sympathetic supply from T5, T6, and parasympathetic from both motor and sensory part is from S2, S3 and S4. Okay, sympathetic, the motor part is from T5 and T6, and sensory is from T10 to L1. So now what are the changes of the uterus with age? At birth, the cervix is longer. Okay, and then in childhood, the body and the cervix is in the ratio 1:2. So cervix is still longer. At puberty, it just reverses to 2:1. So that means the uterus becomes bigger than the cervix. So in childhood, the cervix is bigger, the cervix is longer, it is twice as long as the body. And after menopause, everything atrophies, so it becomes very small. Now we'll talk about the fallopian tubes. So the fallopian tubes are paired structures on either sides of the uterus. It has two openings. One is the uterine and the other is the abdominal opening. So this is the uterine opening. That is the abdominal opening. It is 10 centimeters in length. The fimria, this fimbrial end has finger-like projections. Okay, so the use of this finger-like projections is to pick up the ovum. Pick up the ovum that is shed into the endometrial cavity. I'm sorry, into the peritoneal cavity. So when the ovary throws out the ovum, the finger-like projections will pick up. So one of the longest fimbria, there's an ovarian fimbria which is very long, that will pick up the ovum and transport it through the fallopian tube. There are 3 layers: serous, muscular and mucus. Okay, so very less muscles in the fallopian tube also. Okay, even the fallopian tube can distend, so very less muscles over here. So it has 3 layers. The serous is the outer layer, then you have the muscular layer, and inner is the mucus layer. The mucus layer, you have columnar epithelium which is ciliated and secretory. So it is lined by columnar epithelium. It is ciliated. Ciliated why? Because this cilia will help in transporting the ovum towards the, where does the fertilization take place? Anyone? It takes place in the ampulla. Okay, so at the ampulla. So this is where, when it picks up the ovum, when it is picked up, it is transported through its fimbrial-like projection, through the cilia, up till the ampulla where fertilization takes place, and then again it has to go into the uterus for implantation. So again the fimbria will be helpful, okay? And it secretes also. So why this secretion is important? For the ovum. The ovum needs nutrition. So this secretion helps in nutrition for the fertilized embryo also, okay? Until it reaches the endometrial cavity for implantation, it has to give it nutrients. Okay, so what are the functions of the fallopian tube? It transports the gametes, facilitates fertilization and survival of the zygote through its secretions. Okay, and what is the blood supply? You have both get, it doesn't have its own blood supply, it is from the anastomosis of the uterine and ovarian vessels. So both of them give branches for the fallopian tubes also. The nerves are also like the uterine and the ovarian nerves. Okay. Now the ovaries. So the ovaries are paired sex glands, one on either side. They are oval in shape, pinkish gray in color. The size is 3 into 2 into 1 centimeters. Okay, it is intraperitoneal. It lies in the ovarian fossa on the lateral pelvic wall. It has two ends, tubal and uterine end. So, and two borders. I'll show you in a picture. Two borders, mesovarium and free posterior. Two surfaces, medial and lateral. Okay. So now it lies in the ovarian fossa on the lateral pelvic wall. See, this is the ovarian fossa. Okay. This is the front. This is the bladder. Here we have the rectum. So it is, that is lateral. This is medial. What you are seeing is medial. It is lying on the ovarian fossa. So that is lateral. Okay. Here, because you can see the bone over here. That is lateral over there. So it is lying in the ovarian fossa. It has two ends, the tubal and uterine end, and two borders. Okay, so two ends wide. See, this is the uterine end, that is the tubal end. Okay, and then borders. So this is free posterior border, and then the other one is anterior border, which is related to the mesoovarium. Two surfaces, medial and lateral. And what is the function of the ovary? It helps in germ cell maturation, storage and release, and also it helps in release of estrogen and progesterone, so steroids. So hormones are released from the ovary. So the anterior border, also known as the mesoovarium, is what? A fold of peritoneum from the posterior leaf of the broad ligament is attached, okay, through which the ovarian vessels and nerves enter the hilum. Now you have to picture this in your mind a little, okay? So you just imagine, when you're imagining, you imagine the uterus anteriorly. I don't know if I have a picture. No. Okay, so maybe this one. Okay, so maybe over here you can imagine. Okay, so what happens is, whenever you see, in whichever picture you see the ovaries, you have to know it is the posterior view. So this is the posterior, because the ovaries lie posteriorly. Okay, anteriorly you have the broad ligament laterally. Okay, on both sides, anteriorly the broad ligament is there. So the ovary, if it is visible, it is the posterior view. So what happens is, from the broad ligament, the mesoovarium, it is a fold of peritoneum. From the broad ligament is coming behind, and that enters the hilum of the ovary. Okay, so just picture this a little, because I don't think I have a picture over here. Okay, so it has the hilum. It enters, the anterior border is the mesoovarium, which is a fold of peritoneum from the posterior leaf of the broad ligament, and through this the ovarian vessels and nerves enter the hilum. Okay, that is the anterior border of the anterior relation, okay, of the ovary. The posteriorly, it is free and it is related to the ampulla of the tube. Okay, so, and medially you have the femoral part of the tube, and laterally it is in the ovarian fossa. Okay, so laterally it is lying in the ovarian fossa, you can see, and medially it has the fimbria over here, this part. The fimbria is related to the tube, okay? The posterior border is free. I showed you in the first picture, the beginning picture, so posteriorly you could see the border was free, but anteriorly it is attached with the mesoovarium to the broad ligament, okay? So what are the relations of the ovarian fossa? Superiorly we have external iliac vein. You have to know the relations of the ovarian fossa. So external iliac vein, posteriorly the ureter and internal iliac vessels, laterally the peritoneum and separating the obturator vessels and nerves. Okay. So now in the picture, if you can appreciate, superiorly you have the external iliac vein. Okay. So here this is the external iliac vein. Okay. So that is superiorly. Posteriorly you have the ureter. So you can see the ureter here. That is the ureter and the internal iliac vessels. Okay, and laterally, obviously, the peritoneum will be separating it from the obturator vessels and nerves. Okay, it is lying on the ovarian fossa. So it is covered by the inner structure. It is covered by single layer of cuboidal cells, which is also known as the germinal epithelium. That is a layer of cuboidal cells, which is also known as the germinal epithelium, and it consists of outer cortex and inner medulla. So all of us know whatever happens in the cortex of the ovary. So the germ cell maturation is all happening in the cortex. The medulla is only a few smooth muscles, few nerves, vessels, stroma. Okay, so that's it. What happens is all happening in the cortex of the ovary. So this is lined by cuboidal cells. So beneath the germinal epithelium, the stromal cells are thickened to form the tunica albuginea. It contains follicles. The cortex contains follicles in various phases of development, and the medulla is loose connective tissue with blood vessels, nerves, and few smooth muscles. So blood supply, we know it is a direct branch coming from the aorta, like in the testes. Okay, so it is the same. The ovarian artery is a direct branch from the aorta. Venous is, there is a pampiniform plexus which forms ovarian veins, and this drains into the IVC on the right and left renal vein on the left. So are you people writing it down or you're just listening? Students?
Ma'am, can you give the slide to us?
Okay, so after the class is finished, then I'll see where I can share the slides. I have to leave it here only. You can take it from here, right?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so wait, just wait. Okay, I'll see for slide sharing. I'll call someone here.